For Progressive Voices, I'm John Sinton, and this is a turning point. Today, conduct unbecoming. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. That's from George Orwell's 1984. So now who are we to believe? A twice impeached, self-admitted / convicted sexual predator and 34-time convicted felon, or our own lying eyes? I already think Donald Trump gets too much press, but his outrageous conduct is mother's milk to our infantile media, and they can't resist. So I'm going to resist, and instead of talking about the convictions, I'm going to talk about the conduct of his supporters in Congress and the media, and the rule of law. You see, the rule of law is, in its essence, quite simple. A grand jury recommends charges, a jury of the defendant's peers is empaneled, they hear the evidence, and then they render a verdict. That's exactly what happened in New York, but Team Trump is having none of it. Republicans have already put party over country twice when they refused to convict him in the Senate, and now they'll continue to denigrate the American legal system, which happens to be the envy of the world, to buoy one grifting con man and, of course, to protect their own money and power. So a guy breaks the law, he's indicted by a grand jury, he is put on trial where a jury of his peers, selected with the approval of his attorneys, finds him guilty unanimously on all 34 counts. Then we go through the looking glass. His allies are, of course, following his despicable lead and going on ad nauseum about the crooked legal system, tying it to the Biden administration, even though a state, not federal jury, and not Soros's imaginary foot soldiers either, did their constitutionally prescribed duty. None of these pundits, senators, or Congress critters is willing to talk about his conduct, yet it is his conduct that reaped the multiple state and federal criminal indictments and his civil conviction for sexual assault. They fear him, and they fear their own potential loss of power. And that fear is so great that they are intent on undermining our legal system's 249 years of jurisprudence to defend one individual whose conduct is frankly indefensible. Trump said, quote, "If they can do this to me, they can do it to anyone," unquote. Well, yes, that's precisely the point of the rule of law. No one is above the law. The self-inflicted wound is Trump's stock in trade. By now we all know the go-to move that follows his outrageous words and deeds. It's called projection. It's fascinating to see him take his own missteps and say it's actually his enemies that are doing it, specifically destroying democracy and flaunting the rule of law. You can't blame him trying. It's always worked before. And as long as his people consume right-wing media, it will continue to work. This sets up a very different kind of presidential race. It's no longer Trump versus Biden. Now it's Trump versus the justice system and Trump versus American democracy. Trump, not a policy guy to begin with, probably wouldn't have talked very much policy anyway. That's the normal bread and butter of a presidential race, but now he'll spend the next 6 months railing against the judge, a devil, the jury, rigged, the prosecutor, corrupt, and our country, fascist. And most importantly, the American system of jurisprudence. As a story in the Washington Post recently noted, to prevail, he and his sycophants must bring down the system. Expect a grievance-filled summer and fall, where there will be no support from Republicans for our unexpectedly fragile institutions. The complainer-in-chief is going to wear you out with his infantile claims that he is innocent, wrongly convicted by a weaponized justice system. Those who used to be valiant supporters of law and order will spend the next half year tearing down law enforcement and the judicial system, all for political advantage. Don't forget that in the 1950s, Senator Joseph McCarthy, a Republican from Wisconsin, tried the same approach of indicting the system without evidence and so scared his colleagues that they got out of the way and let him run roughshod over the institution until its sole female member, Margaret Chase Smith, the Republican from Maine, stood to say, Those of us who shout the loudest about Americanism in making character assassinations are all too frequently those who, by our own words and acts, ignore some of the basic principles of Americanism. I think it's hard to have faith in the American electorate when the National Science Foundation says that 25% of us believe that the sun revolves around the earth. I keep telling myself that Donald Trump has lost the popular vote in his only 2 election campaigns by a total of 10 million votes. I hope he won't win the popular vote this time either, but the election, the Electoral College, turns on just 300,000 voters in only 5 swing states. So, anything could happen. The conduct of a desperate, pathological liar is unsurprising. The conduct of his allies, who absolutely know better, is unbecoming of officers of the United States of America. For Progressive Voices, I'm John Sinton.
PV brings you the best progressive audio and video in one free stream. Stephanie Miller, Tom Hartman, Randy Rhodes, David Packman, Brad Friedman, and more. Search Progressive Voices on the TuneIn app, download the free Progressive Voices app, or go to progressivevoices.com.